Hi, everybody. I attended your event last night and sat next to Joe, and I think he described me as an extreme extrovert at the end of the evening. Poor Joe. I'm sorry if I talked your ear off. Very, very excited to be here today. I've been sitting through your session this morning and listening to your comments, and I'm just very, very excited to be here. So thank you very much. I'm going to be talking about how to work with and lead people not like you. So just a quick little interactive exercise. I will never put you on the spot. I will never ask you a trick question or make you look silly or anything like that. So just quick show of hands. How many of you like football as your favorite sport? Or to watch it or participate or whatever? Okay, baseball? Basketball? Hockey? Tennis? Golf? Soccer? What else is there? Bocce. What's that? What's that? Cricket, racquetball. Okay, whatever. Okay. Somebody just is perpetually raising their hand over there. How many of you like to cook? How many of you don't like to cook? All right. How many of you like winter as your favorite season? And spring? And summer? Autumn? Okay. How many of you have children? Of those of you who have children, how many of you have boys? How many of you have girls? How many have both? Awesome. Okay. And how many of you like milk chocolate over dark chocolate? It's not a competition. It's like, woohoo! How many of you like dark chocolate over milk chocolate? How many of you don't like chocolate at all? You're so weird to me. Yeah, so weird to me. Okay, and how many of you have dogs? How many of you have cats? How many cats? No. Anyway, my point in all of this is that even though you all work for the same organization and you are all very, very similar in so many ways, so you're technically proficient in the area that you're proficient in as accounting, et cetera, but also look at the diversity in this room that has nothing to do with race, ethnicity, age, gender, sexuality, or anything like that. I just asked a bunch of random questions and people in the room answered in different ways. So I want to just start with just a little bit of table setting. Some of this stuff you may know, some of it you may not know, but 1 in 3 people now in the United States is not white, and obviously this changes by state. So places like Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, New York are way more diverse than, let's say, New Hampshire or Idaho, but nevertheless, the aggregate stat is 1 in 3. And the census has been tracking diversity with this fun little thing called the diversity index for the last 3 decades. And all it means is if I grab any 2 people at random anywhere in the United States, what's the likelihood that those 2 people will be of different races or ethnicities? So back in 1980, if I grabbed any 2 people at random, I had a 34% probability that those 2 people would be of different races or ethnicities. Or in other words, I had a 66% probability that they were going to be of the same race, probably white. But look how fast it's changed. In just 3 decades, we went from a 34% probability to a 52% probability. And I know I'm probably the only person you're ever going to meet who is totally geeking out about the census next year. Like, I can't wait. But here it is. The forecast for next year, which is next month, is that the diversity index will be 65, meaning that by next year, the likelihood that any 2 people selected at random anywhere in the United States is 65%. So not only are we becoming more diverse, as you can see, the pace at which we are becoming more diverse is happening more quickly. So this is not a fad, this is a trend. The difference between a fad and a trend is fads come and go, like fashion, right? Trends don't come and go, they're shifts. And once they shift, they rarely shift back. Don't pay attention to fads in business or in life. You really can't. But do pay attention to trends, right? Your job is to pay attention to trends. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Yeah. No, there's always applause at that. All right, so 1 in 6 people now in the United States is married to a spouse of a different race or ethnicity. And I think this one's kind of interesting because it wasn't that long ago, just a few decades ago, that this simply wasn't done, right? You just simply didn't do this. So I was reading an article on Valentine's Day this year that was talking about deal breakers for relationships. All right, so this is I love you, and you love me, but we can't be together. Deal breaker, right? So the top 3 deal breakers in the 60s for a relationship were in order. Number 1, person of a different race or ethnicity. It simply wasn't done. Number 2, person of a different major religious group. It also simply wasn't done. And number 3, because it was the 60s and women were not in the workforce very much, number 3 was, does he have the ability to provide a good living for a family and support a family? Okay? So, top 3 deal breakers in the 60s, race, religion, livelihood. You know what the top 3 deal breakers are now? Number 1, personal hygiene. I got nothing. I mean, this is not a third world country, like soap and water are widely available. I don't get it. Number 2, talking too much about your ex. And number 3, my personal favorite, overly involved in your mobile device. So my point is this, we've always had deal breakers for relationships and we always will, but the things that made the list just a few decades ago that were the deal breakers don't even make the list now. Well, now we have a new list, right? So we are in fact changing. So we're not just changing racially and ethnically, for sure we are, but we're changing in every way, politically, socially, fiscally, increasingly with a shrinking middle class who would know this better than you, and religiously. We're changing in all different kinds of ways. But the reason that I like to talk about people not like you and not what I call the D word, diversity. And I'm all about it, don't get me wrong, my entire brand is built on this, but what I find, this is just me, what I find is that when I say diversity, a lot of people immediately default to racial and ethnic diversity or any other kind of diversity that we've been talking about here today. And my definition of diversity is any way you can be different from me. Okay, just broader than just race, ethnicity, etc. Do you have children? You do. I don't. So we're both women, we're both white. Let's just say we're the same age. I know you're younger, don't be a hater. Okay, so we're both women, we're both white. Let's say we're the same age. Let's say we live in the same zip code, and let's even say we make the same, household income. On paper, you and I would look the same demographically. Check, check, check. But you know and I know that if you have kids and I don't, we're actually going to be very, very different. So here's some ways that you might not have thought about diversity at work, or maybe you have. I don't know. How about introverts versus extroverts? I'm an extrovert. Can you tell? And my husband is an introvert in the extreme. He hates people. So he really does. How about creative versus analytic thinking? I mean, who would know this better than you? Someone in accounting is very different than someone who's a graphic designer, right? Someone in the legal side of the business is very different than someone who's in sales, et cetera. Morning people versus night owls. How about that, right? Let me see the morning people. Let me see the night owls. There's a lot of you, night owls. There's a lot of you. Wait, let me see it again. Oh my gosh. So don't take this the wrong way, but wouldn't you agree that for night owls, that the working world is not set up for you? Right? I feel sorry for you because conference calls and meetings start at 8 and you're like, we don't get rolling until 11. Yeah, so it's hard for you. It's hard for you. Small business owner versus a large corporate executive. Again, who would know this better than you? Regional differences. I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that the North is different from the South. The East Coast is different from the West Coast. How about communication styles? Some people want to sit down and have a face-to-face meeting with you. That's how they feel most comfortable. Other people would find that to be a total imposition and be like, why can't you just email me or text me? And then I was doing this presentation one time, and this guy yells out from the group. He goes, I got one for your list. I said, what's that? And he goes, Apple people versus Google people. Right? The list goes on and on. So real quickly, and again, we got this chat box going on here, and maybe you could just even call it out. What other ways can you think of being diverse? Anybody have any ideas? Again, in the spirit of the definition is any way someone can be different from you. Yes? Single parents versus married parents versus non-parents, right? Or grandparents or whatever. Yes, absolutely, single parents. What else? Just call it out. I can't even necessarily see you. People who watch Game of Thrones versus people who don't watch Game of Thrones. Excellent. Weird, but excellent. Okay, yes. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's a cultural phenomenon. What else? Skirts versus pants. All right, what else? Short versus tall. What else? Can't hear. Ooh. Star Wars versus Star Trek. Star Trek, yep. What else? I see a major competition going on here. Yep, what else? That is true, right. What else? Bald versus hair. All right. You're not bitter, you're good, right? What else? Yeah, that's cool. What else?
City, suburb, country.
Yes. There's no doubt in my mind, that's a great one. There's no doubt in my mind that someone who lives in a loft in Manhattan is going to be very different in every way than someone who lives on a ranch in West Texas, right? Or a rural area. Absolutely. Great. What else?
Accountants and everyone else.
Bingo. Yeah, right. Well, let's break this down. How about people who are sort of good with financial information and people who aren't? Or just good with money and people who aren't? Speaking of that, how about education versus, those who are educated with a high school or a college or a PhD versus someone who has a GED, right? What else? Artsy versus not, right. Again, an engineer is going to be focused on functionality, and an artistic person is going to be focused on how does it look, et cetera. Yep. Canadians versus Americans. Yes, I do love the maple leaf. I got to tell you, your country is one of the only countries on the planet that has never been at war. Good for you. No, it's absolutely, it's not true? It's not true at all? Okay, we'll discuss afterwards, okay. Apparently Wikipedia's got it wrong. Okay, clarifying, yes, okay. All right, settle down. This is like, the clock is running here, okay? Okay, the clock is running here. How about this one? I love this one. Somebody yelled it out at a conference one time. They said, smokers versus non-smokers. And before you start going like, whoa, it was interesting, I asked them to expand on it, and they said, well, at our company, you can't smoke inside, so those who smoke have to step outside the building to smoke, and consequently, the smokers have formed their own community of smokers that actually pulls from all different kinds of people throughout the company in all different areas, and I thought it was kind of interesting because they said this group of people would never otherwise hang out together, but they do because they're on a smoke break. And I thought that was like an interesting insight. Can you think of anything else? Ways that we can be different? Rich versus poor, no doubt about it, right. Manual transmission. Which are you? Absolutely, right. How about values? How about core values? Someone who homeschools their child is different than someone who doesn't homeschool their child, right? That has nothing to do with race or ethnicity, but definitely a value statement. Or, someone who recycles versus somebody who doesn't. Right? I shouldn't say the word versus. Anyway, you get the idea. We are all working with people who are different from us, and people are different in all different kinds of ways. So as I go through this presentation and I'm talking about people not like you, think about how that might manifest itself in your role and people not like you. I'll give you just a quick example. I had a boss one time who was incredibly deliberate, very thoughtful, very much a ponderer, and also he needed a lot of time to make a decision. So if I needed a decision on something from him on Thursday, I kind of had to get with him on Monday to give him a chance to ask questions, get data, and just sleep on it for a couple of nights. That's just how he rolled. Then I changed jobs, and I go to work for a guy that I would call ready, fire, aim, okay? And literally, I would broach something with him, and he'd be like, sounds great, Cal, go. And I'd be like, well, don't you want some more data? No, do it, make it happen, good, let me know how it goes. And so I had to adapt to a very different kind of supervisor, from somebody who was super analytical and super deliberate to somebody who was very impulsive. And so we're all different, we process information differently. Now, I'm a marketing person by training, and the number one rule in marketing is people respond to images that they relate to. that either look like them or what they want to be, but that are relatable. So one of the big shifts that we've seen in my lifetime is that companies are really getting real with us when it comes to marketing. No longer are they just staying in the safe lane and going, okay, don't ever court controversy, don't ever do anything that might be controversial, just show people the real. Because we want to see the real, and we respond to the real. So a couple of examples. Cheerios is the #1 selling cereal in the United States. So did anybody see the Cheerios ad about a year ago with the interracial couple? Did anybody see that? For those of you who didn't see it, here's how it went. White mom, black dad, adorable little girl. And the little girl says, Mommy, why do we eat Cheerios? And Mommy says, because it's good for Daddy's heart. And then the little girl goes into the living room where Daddy is napping on the couch, and she takes the entire box of Cheerios and pours it on his chest because it's good for his heart. That was it. They didn't make any big deal about the fact that there was an interracial couple. They didn't go, check out our cool interracial couple, right? They just showed a couple. They just showed a family. Speaking of families, Honey Maid, the nation's only graham cracker. Have you ever thought about it? They don't have any competition. Honey Maid is doing a campaign that features no actors, no models, nothing but real people and real families. And their tagline is a wholesome snack for all wholesome families. And they show every kind of family that you could possibly have, single parents, grandparents, married parents, every kind of family construct that there is. And one of their family constructs that they show is a gay couple with children, wholesome dadvertising from Honey Maid. So companies are adapting and realizing that when they show us the real, it actually drives business. So fun fact, 40% of people between the ages of 18 and 35 have 4 or more tattoos. Not a tattoo, 4 or more. So back to my premise of, if an entire generation of people have ink, then how come we're not seeing more ink when we're looking at marketing that is actually directed to people of that age group? Well, we're starting to. So here's a bank in Philadelphia, and this is a billboard. This particular bank has a very urban city center footprint. It makes sense that their prospects and their customers are young, single, urban dwelling professionals. So it makes sense that this woman has like this cool, edgy haircut, but look at her left arm. It's an entire sleeve of ink. And this is their business-to-business marketing. It actually shows real small business owners that they've actually loaned money to. And this woman is also showing her ink as well. This is banking. It's a pretty conservative industry. Number one, nobody ever does anything in marketing that doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you pull it and you do something else. They're doing this because it works. And if in a conservative industry like banking is doing this, then it's really touching a chord. CoverGirl embraces diverse beauty. CoverGirl makeup now features their first Muslim model, because if you're an observant Muslim woman, as you know, you cover your hair. And then if you cover your hair, then when I look at you, all of the focus is on your eyes and lips when I'm looking at you. And they also now have their first cover boy, because they have realized that makeup is no longer just for women. I want him to come to my home every morning at 7 and do my eyeshadow. That is perfection. Also, CVS has banned photoshopping in its beauty ads. And this is, again, getting back to the real. We want to see the real, not Photoshop perfection. So I think this is a huge thing. Just stop photoshopping beauty products. So no longer are you going to see this airbrushed image of this woman. You're now going to actually get to see her for the hideous woman that she actually is. Yeah. So this guy was actually asking me one time after a presentation, he goes, can you go back to that slide? And I said, yes. And he goes, I cannot tell the difference between these two images. And I said, well, let's break it down. On the right, this is the unretouched one. She's got a little bit of hair on the back of her neck that they took out. And she has 2 moles on the side of her face that they took out. And then they erased the tiny fine lines around her eyes and her mouth, because we certainly wouldn't want to look like we'd ever laughed. That's hugely unattractive, right? My point is, she's a beautiful woman. She doesn't need any photoshopping. I would kill to look like this for an hour. Barbie gets real for the first time. Anybody ever play with Barbies? Or still? All are welcome here, right? Barbie, let me see my Barbie people. Okay, so I was a huge Barbie girl. You know that if you played with Barbies, that the original Barbie looked like this, and the original Barbie looked like this for like 6 decades, okay? Six decades or so. Never, ever, ever changing the shape of the Barbie, no matter how unrealistic that is. Well, finally, Mattel caved and gave us, and responded to some pressure, and gave us last October, for the first time ever, a curvy Barbie. The first time ever that Barbie's shape changed. Now, personally, I don't think she's that curvy. I think they could have gone a little further. She looks actually pretty normal to me. She doesn't let me, I'll show you curvy. But yeah, but it's a start, you know, and it's like I can't really get down on Mattel too much for this because it's a start. And if you don't think that they went far enough, let me at least frame this up for you with where they've been. So let me take you back to 1965 Slumber Party Barbie. So for those of you who raised your hands and said, let me just see one more time, the Barbie people. Okay, so you know that if we played with Barbies, most Barbies were themed, were they not? Like, so I had like Dr. Barbie and Malibu Barbie, and they came with certain accessories that were part of the theme. So 1965 Slumber Party Barbie came in a box like this, and she came with accessories that little girls would want at a slumber party, like slippers and a bathrobe and a hairbrush, because little girls like to brush each other's hair, and weirdly, a scale. And of course, it's not a real scale, it's just a play scale, but the scale was permanently set to 110. Now, I don't know about you, I don't know anybody who weighs 110, and if you do, I don't really want to hear about it, okay? So, no, I seriously don't. Like, just that's gonna bother me. But anyway, in case you couldn't, what, ladies, would you agree? That's a pretty unrealistic weight these days. Okay, so in case you couldn't weigh 110, they were also kind enough to include this handy-dandy little book called How to Lose Weight. And the book had one page, and the page said, don't eat. Yes, you should be outraged. No, it's crazy. It's insane. This is insane. Like, how does this happen? You know that in large organizations like this, nothing happens without consensus in a meeting, right? So just try to imagine this. No, let's go back. You know that there was a meeting, and somebody was like, what should we put in the box with Slumber Party Barbie? And they go, hey, how about some slippers? Excellent idea. Great, great, great. What else? Let's a hairbrush. Yes, little girls love to do that. Right. And a bathrobe. For sure, we need a bathrobe. Right. And a scale. Yes, definitely a scale. How does this happen? Anyway, I'm digressing, but you can see here that curvy Barbie is a big step away from this, okay? It only took 6 decades, but it's a start. So, Brawny salutes strong women. We all know the Brawny paper towel guy. He looks like this. Well, Brawny was like, wait a minute. Why should the attribute of strength only belong to men? Don't we all know strong women? So now they have the Brawny paper towel woman and a campaign that says, strength has no gender, who's your shiro? So it's kind of cool. The new Gerber baby is real and irresistible, and this is kind of like the Mattel thing, where it only took them 5 or 6 decades, but they got there. For the longest time, the Gerber baby wasn't even a baby, it was an illustration, right? And I don't even personally think this baby looks very happy. I seriously don't. I think if you're gonna have an illustration of a baby, wouldn't you want it to be like a happy, excited baby? I think this baby looks alarmed, yeah? Strain peas are coming at me, and I'm not having it, yeah. I'm not on board. So finally, they were like, maybe we should actually have a human being as the face of our brand. So last year, they got this little guy. I know, isn't he adorable? He's adorable, and he has Down syndrome. So good for Gerber for showing us a group of people who are largely underrepresented in major marketing campaigns. In fact, this little guy was so well received. I mean, the reaction to him around the world was just like yours, where everybody was like, oh my gosh, he's adorable. That they said, we can't just have one Gerber baby. That was their initial intent. And they were like, we gotta have a new Gerber baby every year, a new spokes baby. So the 2019 spokes baby also marks another first, and here she is. I know. And her name is Carrie Yang, and she's of Hmong descent. And here's the cool thing. The Gerber executive said that she beat out 544,000 other babies, which how'd you like to be on that task force, okay? Hey, for the next year, you get to look at cute babies every day. page after page after page of cute babies and then pick the cutest. That'd be like baby therapy, right? Instead of like pet therapy, it'd be like, oh. So anyway, she beat out 544,000 other babies, and the Gerber executive said that they chose her, and I quote, for her wondrous eyes. I know, I can almost like not look at her without getting emotional. I see the future in her face. I just think she's like, there's something about her. And I guess they saw it too. Target ads feature kids with Down syndrome. So Target makes their primary profit two ways: children's clothing and children's toys. Don't all children wear clothing? Don't all children play with toys? Once again, good for Target for showing us a group of people who are largely underrepresented in major marketing campaigns. So again, the main thing in marketing is nobody does anything that doesn't work. And what we're finding here is I'm just showing you an array of diversity in brands that you know because it works. And it works because what they're showing us is us, right? They're showing us us. And people want to see images that they can relate to. So let's bring it back to business and the topic at hand for a second. So when working with people who are not like you, sometimes the differences can create friction. So I know that you are really the good guys. I mean, you're here because you are leaders in diversity and inclusion. I lead. But real honestly, I mean, have you ever worked with anybody who's different from you, however you want to define the difference, and it's actually created a little bit of friction? Nobody? It's just kumbaya everywhere? Yeah. Right, it's sometimes tough, right? Because people don't necessarily see eye to eye, they don't necessarily have the same approach to work, they don't have the same views, and sometimes that can create friction. Well, one of the most common things that I get asked to speak to is a lot of older executives, maybe in like super conservative, stuffy industries, and they're frustrated, and they'll tell me, you gotta come in and talk to us, Kelly, about millennials, right? And they're like, we gotta talk about these millennials. We don't understand them. Yeah, they're a problem for us. And I'm like, how? How are they a problem? And they're like, they're entitled. They don't have a work ethic. Yeah, it's right. I mean, and there's almost like this, like, yeah, they're entitled. They want to leave at 4 o'clock and go to their yoga class. And they want to bring their dog to work. You know, they're like super frustrated. And I'm like, always, hey, if you're frustrated, trust me, they feel it, and the frustration goes both ways. And they're like, no, we're fine. It's just the millennials who are the problem. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. I mean, trust me, the frustration goes both ways. You're frustrated with everything that you just said, and they're looking at you and going, how come he can't open an attachment, right? We all know this guy. Sam, come in here. There's an attachment. I don't understand. Yeah. The point is frustration on both sides, but different can be uncomfortable. When you are working with someone who's not like you, however you want to define that, not like you, sometimes that can be uncomfortable. But in business, it's not okay to admit that. No way. Nope. Because it's too risky. Your job could be at risk. You say the wrong thing to the wrong person, they take it the wrong way, you're out. Or maybe you're not out, but you get, your hand slapped and you're labeled as somebody who maybe is not on the diversity bandwagon. Or you could be branded with a horrible, horrible label. I'm not talking about you here. I'm talking about the groups at large. Horrible label, like racist, sexist, homophobe, Islamophobe, xenophobe, bigot, you name it. The list goes on and on and on. So the bottom line is you keep quiet. You keep quiet, but you're struggling. Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you don't feel turmoil. Just because you're quiet doesn't mean things are good. You can be quiet, and then the other thing that happens, I think, is that when you're uncomfortable with somebody, you avoid them because you don't know what to say. So it's just, you avoid them, and business can't run like that. I'm here to tell you, though, that if you are struggling to work with somebody who is not like you, you are normal. That's normal. The struggle is normal. You're not a bad person. You're absolutely not alone. The discomfort that you feel is normal. It's true. So let me back up and start by talking about why is working with people who are not like us important in the first place. And you know this. You're like the PhD crowd. But a lot of people don't know this. And so here's an example that you can share with people when you're trying to talk about diversity and inclusion and bringing it home to people. The reason that companies are spending so much time and effort and thought on diversity and inclusion and working with people who are not like us is largely for one key reason. And that is that if you surround yourself with people who are just like you could miss something big. Right? You could miss something big. And business thrives on innovation. So if you surround yourself with people who are just like you and you think all alike and you do things alike, you're going to miss the big opportunities that drive business forward. So quick show of hands. Does everybody in the room know this brand? Or how many of you know this brand? Right? Okay, even if you've never drunk it, you've seen it, you know this brand. All right, so here's the quick backstory on this. Bethany Frankel had this idea that women might really enjoy a good-tasting, low-calorie cocktail that didn't blow their whole calories apart for the day. So she approached every single major liquor company with this idea, and every single one of them turned her down. She forged ahead, built the brand on her own, and 2 years later, after selling 400 million cases of Skinny Girl, Beam, as in Jim Beam, bought her company back from her for $100 million, the same brand that they took a pass on just 24 months earlier. And I don't know about you, but in my life, 24 months goes by like that, right? So what happened? So here's what I think happened. Let's start with a fact. A fact, this is fact. Women metabolize calories differently than men. It's just harder for us. Can I get an amen? Right. So, seriously, you guys are clueless. I say this with love, but you really are. You're clueless. You don't get it, okay? Because it's not as hard for you. You have no idea. You guys, you put on a few pounds and you're like, I gotta lose a few. And you, cut out one potato chip a week. And a month later, you're down 25 pounds. It's unbelievable, okay? And my sisters and I are like, I don't know, can we have 4 lettuce leaves for dinner or we need to stick to 3? You have no idea how difficult it is because it's not as difficult for you. And that's fact because men metabolize calories differently than women. So I think what happened is she went into these large companies that are overwhelmingly run by men, and they didn't think that this was a stupid idea. They were just like, I don't know, would anybody buy this stuff? They couldn't relate. It was a failure of perspective. And obviously 400 million cases of Skinny Girl later, yeah, I would say people are buying it, right? And good for Beam because they actually got back on board. But it was a failure of perspective. And so I think if they'd had some women around the table, those women would have been like, hold up here, are you kidding? This actually has some real merit. We got to get behind this. Right? If you surround yourself with people who are just like you could miss something big. So let's put a little science behind this. And again, I know I'm speaking to the most enlightened group that there is on diversity and inclusion, but I still think it's helpful to have the science. So here's some science behind this. Social psychologists wanted to find out what happens if we take people who are alike and then we throw an outsider into the mix. What happens to the productivity of that group and how do they feel? So they wanted to take race and ethnicity off the table because that can get a little sticky. So what they decided to use instead was groups of sorority sisters and fraternity brothers. All right, so there's the affinity. You're with me on this, right? The likeness and the allegiance, if you will, is to the sorority or the fraternity. So they took groups of 3 sorority sisters, 3 fraternity brothers, gave them a murder mystery to solve, and gave them 20 minutes and clues and all that kind of stuff. But 5 minutes into the exercise, some of the groups were joined by a 4th sorority sister or a 4th fraternity brother, but from a different house. All right, so that's the outsider. They're still all college kids, they're still all in Greek life, but one of them is different. So what happened? Well, as you can imagine, and you know where this is going, it's a no-brainer. Those who had the outsider solved the murder mystery better, faster, more accurately a significant percentage of the time. You saw that coming. That's not where it gets interesting. Where it gets interesting is outsiders made the group better. It more than doubled their chances of getting the right answer. But paradoxically and interestingly, when asked how did it feel to be on the winning team, those who won said that they actually didn't even feel like they were being effective. So, what's your name? Trey? Trey! Awesome! High five, my gosh, you were on the winning team. that feels amazing, doesn't it? What does it feel like, Trey? Ah, you won, right? Trey would report, oh my gosh, I had no idea we were even winning. All we did was bicker. It was so stressful. I didn't know we were even making progress. It sure didn't feel like we were getting anywhere. In fact, I was shocked when we won. Because by the time we were finished, we all hated each other. No, but I'm just saying it was stressful and difficult. And it didn't feel like success, but it was success. So my point is, working with diverse team members felt harder because it is harder, but it produces a better outcome. So when you're working with people who are not like you and it feels hard, or it is hard, number one, you're not crazy, and number two, you're not doing it wrong. It is hard. That's why people don't like to do it, because it's hard. It kind of rocks us out of our comfort zone. And I know you get this, but the teams that you lead and the enterprise as a whole, people need to get this message, because they feel like if it's hard, that it's not working or they're doing it wrong. And neither of those is true. It does feel hard. Trust the process, not the feelings. Trust the process, not the feelings. The feelings aren't going to feel that great, but you will always get to the other side. So, 10 ways that you can actually work with people who are not like you, and not one of these costs a dime. So break the ice with your diverse team. So I think it's interesting to actually ask people a little bit about themselves, and you never know what you're going to learn. I thought it was a great one Bill mentioned this morning on the panel. He was like, get to know people. Get to know people is what he said. And you don't know anything about them until you start really digging in. I mean, yes, you know their title, and maybe you know what city they were born in or something like that, but I'm talking about really getting to know people. So ask your team to share something with the rest that others are not likely to know. Now, you got to give people safe harbor on this. You can't be like, tell us about your felony arrest, okay? People don't like to share that. But here's some safe ones, some softballs. Where do you call home? Or a perfect Saturday would be. Or what's something you're grateful for this week? Or what's something interesting that you're doing right now? I had a boss in a major global ad agency that I worked at, and there were about 60 of us on this one particular team. And I knew everybody by sight, and some people better than others, but there were a bunch that I really didn't know. I mean, I knew who they were, but I didn't know anything about them. And he pulled us all together. This entire meeting took 30 minutes. We just went around the room, and he said, tell the group something interesting that you're doing right now that they're not likely to know. And some people went around the rooms and shared all kinds of things, but the one that really stuck with me was a guy from accounting, and I'm not kidding, Mark from accounting. Mark from accounting shared that he and his wife were in the process of adopting a little baby girl. And everybody in the room went, "Aw," because that's heartwarming. But what it did for me is it changed the way that I saw Mark. No longer did I just see him as a capable accountant. Now I also saw him as a doting dad. And it gave me something to talk about with Mark that was not just work. Every single time I saw Mark in the hallways, I was like, hey, Mark, how's your little girl? And he'd be like, oh my gosh, she's learning her ABCs. You know that song, like ABCD, like it never, ever, ever stops. It's 24/7, she's singing that song. Or, hey, Mark, how's your little baby girl? And he'd say, oh, we just got back from a weekend family vacation. It was awesome. For 2 years, that little girl was the jumping off point for conversations between me and Mark. And by the way, do you think if I ever needed anything from accounting that I got it? Of course I did. Because I expressed interest in him as a human being and as a father. It had nothing to do with accounting and everything to do with where he was with his life. And I'll just share this. This was a little fact about Mark that I would not have known if my boss had not orchestrated this meeting about share something that the others are not likely to know. Because in the culture of the company that I was working in, that kind of stuff just wasn't shared. It just wasn't. So he fostered a conversation that changed the entire dynamic of the team, because now we all knew some little tidbit about the others that we didn't know before. And that's a meeting that costs nothing, but it can build esprit de corps and morale like you wouldn't believe. And that's part of your core values, because sharing personal insights demonstrates that you're curious about your coworkers and your associates, and you also care about them. So if you're actually going to be curious and caring, then you have to invest in that, and you have to pull some information out of people and say, tell me about yourself. So foster that. Also, find common ground. It's always there. It's always there. I do about 75 engagements like this a year. I am constantly thrown in to the mix with people to talk to that I am likely to never see again. So I've become very proficient at making small talk, and I will use anything as a jumping off point to to break the ice. And find common ground because it's always there. I see a guy with a Cubs hat on, I'm like, oh, you like the Cubs? Me too. Not really, actually, I'll just say that, okay? Or, hey, that's a cool necklace. My mom makes jewelry. Where do you find your pieces? Or I hear you like fly fishing. Is it hard to learn? And if you got nothing, I mean, like if you got really nothing, you can always go with this, right? Like, I wonder if they're ever going to fix the heat in this building. Are you as cold as I am, right? Or I wonder if they're ever going to fix the AC. The point is, we all have common ground. It's always there. It's always there. But expect it to feel a little awkward when you're working with somebody new and different. And it is awkward, because you have nothing to go on. But it's only awkward once, because once you have something to go on, you're never in that space again. Once I have some personal insight about you, I am never going to be completely and totally in the dark about you. It's only awkward once. And just because it's awkward doesn't mean it's not working. Use anything you can to break the ice and find that common ground. Build trust. So there's millions and millions and millions of books on building trust in the workplace, and it is very important, but there's not just one kind of trust. Social psychologists have identified two kinds of trust. The first kind of trust is called common trust, and it doesn't have to be earned. You give it to people every single day. People give it to you every single day. You do not have to earn it. It's granted to people automatically. It's the kind of trust that when you're driving to work, you have to trust that the person on the other side of the road is not going to cross the median and hit you head on. When you had breakfast this morning, you had to trust that the chef didn't poison us. When I fly home today, I have to trust that my pilot is well-trained and well-rested. We have to literally put our hands in the lives of people that we don't know and we're never gonna know every minute of every day, and so you don't think about this because you can't. You just can't. So this is called common trust. But the kind of trust that leaders have is vulnerability trust, and it's quite different because it actually has to be cultivated and reciprocated. It doesn't just happen. You can't just say, trust me. So I love this graphic of the apple and the archer, because people, when they look at this graphic, they typically focus on the woman with the apple on her head. And I just want you to really think about this for a second. She has an apple on her head, okay? And there's a guy taking aim with a bow and arrow. So she has to have complete and total trust that his aim is true. But he has to trust that she's not going to move. Because if she's standing there completely still and he is taking precise aim, and then she goes and flinches, all bets are off. This only works if they have complete trust in each other. So how do you actually build trust? How do you build that kind of trust? It doesn't just happen. It requires courage. It requires courage, which is another one of your core values. So here's the key steps to building vulnerability trust. Talk straight, be honest, even when it's hard. Have you ever had to give people bad news? Anybody here ever had to give your team bad news? Right. Anyone can give good news. The real test of your leadership is how do you deliver bad news? And here's what people want. They don't know they want it, but they want you to talk straight and be honest, especially when it's hard, right? Because there's nothing that will erode trust faster than people feeling like they're getting the runaround, right? It's what you're not telling them or the way that you're telling them. So be straight, even when it's absolutely difficult. I am a firm believer that people can handle the truth, even difficult truth. They might not like it. And you have to, as leaders, let them emote. You have to let them go, well, I think that's wrong, or I don't agree with that, or that's not what we talked about. You have to let them get that out. But when the smoke clears and they come to acceptance, and they always do, when they come to acceptance of whatever it is that you've shared, they will realize that they can trust you because you told them the truth and you respected them enough as adults to be able to handle the truth. So, the other thing is use simple language. Because again, the first thing that will erode trust faster than anything is feeling like I'm getting the runaround. The second thing is if you're giving me the runaround with business buzzword bingo, okay? People hate that. You know what I'm talking about, right? I don't really even know what you're talking about, but you're using all these words or whatever, and I can't figure out what you're trying to say. That erodes trust. So use simple language. And it's interesting to me how some of the largest companies, when the chips are down, they actually go to simple language, not complex language. So it's about collaboration, right? Because if you're actually being honest with people and you're actually sharing real information, they're collaborating, they're understanding, and they're trusting. So a quick example of this is Toyota's one of my largest clients. Toyota will tell you that they don't sell cars. They make cars. Dealers sell cars. So they had a truck problem, and they're very reliant on their dealer body to be successful. They had a truck problem, and when trucks are a problem, trucks are really a big problem because that's where the profit is. You cannot make up on Corollas and Camrys with where you miss the mark on trucks. They're very, very high gross profit vehicles. So they were having a truck problem, truck sales were way off, and the senior VP of sales pulled the top 30 truck dealers together in the entire country. This is not the 80-20 rule, it's more like 90-10. These 30 guys make up 90% of all truck sales in the United States for Toyota. Pulled these guys together, the dealers, and he walked into the room. I was there, it went down exactly like this. He walked into the room, he thanked the dealers for coming, and he said, "We can't hit our sales numbers unless we hit our truck numbers." Now, you don't have to be an automotive professional to know exactly what's going on here. So the dealers kind of digested that for a minute, and then he followed that up with, "So what do you need from us to help you sell more trucks?" The dealers put their heads together and came up with a list that looked like this, and the bottom line is there was not a single PowerPoint graph or chart. Nothing was busted out like that. The entire meeting took 40 minutes. 30 minutes of that was the dealers coming up with this list. The entire thing went down exactly like that. We can't hit our sales numbers unless we hit our truck numbers. What do you need from us to help you sell more trucks? Here's the list. Meeting adjourned. And it worked. So when you really, really, really have to move the ball down the field, simple language not only wins the day, it builds trust. There's nothing to hide behind in these phrases. There's nothing to hide behind. People will trust you. Be aware that our differences are real. In this kumbaya world that we live in, people like to say, like, "Oh, we're all the same." No, we're not. We're all equal, but we're not the same. And we celebrate our differences. We're doing that right here. But our differences are real, and we need to acknowledge that. So a friend of mine, he's a retail executive. By that, I mean he's a regional vice president for multi-unit retail. And for the first 25 years of his career, he spent that career at Lowe's. So not to be sexist, but this is just, again, fact. The home improvement category draws a lot of men to work there. I don't know. You guys just like it, okay? Power tools, lumber, hardware. Yeah, you guys like that stuff. And the higher you go at Lowe's or Home Depot, the more male it gets. So for the first 25 years of his career, he is steeped in a culture of working with men. He is working with like nothing but men. Then he changes jobs, and he goes to work for Sally Beauty Supply. So you get where this is going, right? So in the same way that the home improvement category draws a lot of men, the beauty industry draws a lot of women. So suddenly he's working with all women. Well, we go to lunch. I take him to lunch. He's been on the job like 60 days, and I'm like, "Hey, Scott, how's it going?" And he's like, oh my God, I'm dying, it's so hard." And I said, "Why is it so hard?" And he goes, "It's all women." And I'm like, "So you knew that?" And he's like, "They're so different." And he's like just lamenting, and I'm like, What? Tell me, how different can it be?" And he goes, "They're so different." And I said, "Tell me." And he said, "I had my first meeting with my district managers. This is the first meeting where they've all met each other for the first time." He's their new boss. And he said, we're going through sales, and one of my district manager's sales are in the toilet. And we start talking about this, and she starts crying, right? And I said, "You don't mean crying, you mean like she's whining, right? She's whining." And he goes, "No, actual tears, Kelly, like tears are coming out of her eyes." And I said, "Oh my gosh, what did you do?" And he said, "I had no idea what to do. In 25 years at Lowe's, nobody ever cried over sales." And I said, "Okay, well, but actually, what did you do, Scott? Because you did something." And he said, "I did the only thing I know how to do." And I said, "Talk to me. Tell me what's going on and how I can help." And if you break this down, it's genius. Talk to me. Let's get a dialogue going. What's going on? Where's the problem? so I can help you. He didn't say, why are you crying? Which only would have made her clam up even more, right? What he found by asking it this way was she was not crying over sales, she was upset. And for some of us, when we get upset, it manifests itself in our eyes, right? It manifests itself in our eyes. We get emotional, and for some of us, it manifests itself in our eyes. And so what he found by asking it this way is she was not upset, she was not crying over sales, she was upset because she felt like she was letting her new boss down. And once he learned that, he was able to reassure her and go, you're not letting me down. You're actually one of the most accomplished district managers I've ever had the privilege of working with. Your track record speaks for itself. But let's talk about what's going on in your district because clearly something is affecting sales. The point is we are different, and it's okay, and you know that, but it's important to understand some of these differences. So the following 2 slides are going to change your life. How to work with women and how to work with men. I'm not overselling, so seriously, if you drifted, this is a good time to come back, okay? Yeah, game changer. So, and there's science behind this. Women value expansive choices, and we like seeing all of our options. We're not overwhelmed when we're given lots of options. It's actually quite the opposite. I can look at 175 different colors of blouses, and I know I want the tangerine one, and I know it, because I looked at all 175, and that's the one I want. Men, on the other hand, want their choices simplified. I'm sorry, you guys, but there's a reason your clothes only come in 3 colors, okay? Black, navy, khaki. Look at you. Look at you. So all kidding aside, the magic number for men is 3. 2 is not enough choice, and 4 is way too much, okay? Fun fact. Men buy more electronics than any other consumer group. More flat screens, more tablets, more cameras, more phones, more stuff. Haven't you ever noticed that when you go shopping for electronics, all of the pricing is done in groups of 3? Even stuff that's not electronics, that's heavily marketed to men, like tires, is done in groups of 3. Why? Because it works. So here's how you might use this in business, okay? So I'm not an accountant, so don't be a hater if I don't get the lingo right, okay? Here's how you might use this. If Tracy is my boss and we're talking about an accounting, or Tracy is my client and we're talking about an accounting matter, I might say, here's all the different ways that we can do this, okay? Here's all the different solutions that I see. Let's sit down and I'll walk you through all these. She'll be patient with that. Now, if Bill is my client or my boss, the exact same situation, I would say, Bill, there's a lot of ways we can do this. I can think of about a dozen. But let me know when you have some time. I want to walk you through my top 3 recommendations. All right? So what you need to do is make sure you get credit for the work that you've done. But for a man, narrow it down to 3. If he wants more information, you can always give him more. But studies show that men like 3 more than anything else. And that's going to move the needle and move the ball down the field for you. So you can also use this in your personal life. Yeah, preach it. I manage my husband very differently once I learned this, okay? I share this with you as just a life skill, okay, because I love you. So you tell me if you can relate to this. This is what it's like at my house on a Friday night. It's been a long week. We both work. We're tired and we're hungry. Okay? So this is what it's like at my house. You tell me if you can relate. I have to act this out. I got to get the body language right. What do you want to do about dinner? I don't care. What do you want to do? I don't care. Do you want to go out or do you want to stay in? I don't care. Do you want to go out or do you want to stay in? If we went out, where would we go? I have no idea. If we stayed in, what would we have? I don't know. Do we even have anything here? Right? So this is how it goes. Round and round and round for 10 minutes, and then we have a fight, okay? Because when you're tired and you're hungry, bad things happen. Bad things happen, and especially at the end of a long week. So once I learned this, I got really frustrated with this. Every week, same thing. Once I learned this, I decided to take matters into my own hands. And so now, here's what it goes like at my house on a Friday night. Now I go to him and I go, Thai, Mexican, or burgers on the grill? And he's like, burgers on the grill. Done. You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Telling you, give people what they want, which leads me to my next thing. Gee, give people what they want. So if men like options in 3 and women like expansive options, use it. Use it. Give people what they want. That's a great way to bridge differences. So some of the largest brands actually don't do the same stuff everywhere. So Macy's is the largest department store that we have in the United States. Even Macy's doesn't sell the same stuff everywhere. If you go to Salt Lake City and you go to Macy's, you're going to find a larger selection of large, oversized cookware. Why? Because Salt Lake City is home to the largest Mormon population in the U.S. A key tenet of Mormonism is not just larger family sizes, but also eating family meals together. So if you have a family of 6 or 7, it's going to be a whole lot easier to make scrambled eggs in a large, oversized skillet. If you go to Atlanta, which is home to the largest black population in the United States and one of the most devout church-going populations, you will find a larger selection of women's church hats because many black women choose to wear church hats to church. So while Macy's sells church hats everywhere, you'd find a larger selection of them in Atlanta. And if you go to Seattle, which is home to the largest Asian population in the United States, you'll note that Macy's stocks a larger selection of clothing for both men and women in smaller sizes as a whole, particularly on the inseam. Even Burger King doesn't just sell the same stuff everywhere. Even Burger King adjusts its menu. So as Tracy mentioned, that's one of my clients. I did the Burger King franchisee meeting last year. They thought it was hilarious that my last name is McDonald. Yeah, seriously. They're like, we got Kelly McDonald at Burger King. I'm like, no relation. Anyway. So anyway, the president of Burger King was talking about giving people what they want. And in New York City, if you go to Burger King, their breakfast sandwich is served on a bagel. And in Birmingham, that same sandwich would be served on a biscuit. So you can see how even major companies, global companies, just tweak their products and services to give people what they want. So how have you adapted to give somebody what they want? Whether it's a boss, whether it's a person on your team, whether it's a client. This is an interactive exercise at your table, and then we're going to get some share-outs real quick. You have 3 minutes, so you can't dilly-dally here. You have 3 minutes to figure out how you've ever adapted to give somebody what they want. Go. We still have those chat boxes, right? Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
You're doing great.
Okay. How's it going with you? How's it going with you? They didn't laugh as much over the men and women thing as I think. But I think it's because, again, this is a really evolved group.
Yeah.
Like, so they're like, that's not funny.
Well, it was funny, but
Like-
they've heard a little bit before.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. 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 It's not new. Yeah. Shh. Shh. Do you know this trick? Do you know this trick? It was actually a sound guy that taught me this. If you're all talking and then I try to talk over you and go, okay, people, let's pull it together, then you can't hear me because my voice is at the same frequency as yours. But if I go, shh. So the next time you're trying to pull your people together and they're running wild, then you just try that because you can bring a room of hundreds of people to complete silence. So we have the chat boxes, and I heard some little interesting tidbits, and there's no right or wrong here. Real quick, somebody needs to raise their hand and share with us how you ever adapted to give somebody what they want. Lead by example, people.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I'm a national resource manager for our technology consulting practice, and I support 3 different groups, and I have 3 very different leaders that I have to deliver reports to on a weekly basis. And over a bit of a trying 1-year period, I figured out that they all like to receive and consume their reports in very different fashions. It's too much to open an attachment, as you mentioned earlier, so they get an executive summary in email. And one of them likes to see all of the numbers and all of the data, and I literally just copy and paste it from the report, and that goes in, and that's what he has. And the other one has exactly the same information, but wants it written out in a summary.
Awesome.
And needs bullet points. He needs the words to me to tell him what the data means. And then I have another leader who is my favorite just because I'm biased and it takes me less work. All I do is send him the attachment to the email, and it says good, bad, or okay, and it color codes in those words.
Oh.
It's green or orange or red, and that's all he needs. So exactly the same report, exactly the same data. If
Delivered.
they opened it, they would all be able to read each other's, but how they consume it has to be tailored to them.
How they consume the information and how you deliver it is how you're adapting them. What is your name?
Chloe Saber.
Give it up for Chloe. All right, that's a great example. That's a great example. Different people don't take in for information in the same way. That's a great example. Anything else? Anybody ever had to adapt to anybody different from them in work? Yeah, here comes the chat box. And whip it at him. He's over here. Oh no, she got it. Okay, sorry, go ahead, what's your name?
My name's Maura Lamb.
All right.
I think very similar to that, but I was thinking more of like your mentees or your advisees, asking them how they prefer to learn.
Yes.
So I do that when I start out with anybody, so that way I can,
Taylor.
tailor my delivery to them in the best way that they're going to receive the information.
And the goal is to get them to learn, right? So, I mean, yeah, that's a great question. All right, give it up for her. That's awesome. Thank you. That's awesome. That's awesome. It's so fundamental, but so many people don't do that. It was white shirt over here. Okay, so, yeah. Okay, that's your new nickname now. What's your name?
Andrew.
Andrew. How'd you adapt to something?
So this is part of the Happy Wife, Happy Life motto, where I'm a morning person, my wife is not a morning person, and after we had kids, I changed my work schedule a little bit. I used to be the first one in the office, be more productive during the morning, and now I try to give that time to my kids. My wife can sleep in a little bit later, so I might get up super early still, and I'll use that time either to get an hour of work done or exercise or something. Try to exercise.
Right.
Get an hour of work done is normally what happens, but use that time to provide a little consistency. So she's happy, she has a certain schedule, my kids are happy, they know.
It flows.
Yeah, everything kind of works, and just kind of adopting the schedule in that way.
I love that. Give it up for him. That's a great example. And you can also do that with somebody that you work with. Let's say that somebody who's on your team or your boss or whatever is not a morning person, and you know that about him or her. So then you might be like, okay, I'm a morning person, but I'm just going to make sure that the meetings that I schedule with him or her are starting at 10:30 or 11, not at 8:30 in the morning. The little tweaks that we can just give people what they want and adapt. Anybody else? One more. Anybody else? We've got somebody over here. Where did that little chat box go? Oh, here it comes. And then say who you are if you wouldn't mind, your name.
Hi.
Hey.
John Lee, I'm a partner in our Toronto office.
Okay.
So for me, I have a director on my team who has a daughter that she needs to pick up at daycare every day at 4 o'clock. And
Okay.
so we've agreed to a flex schedule with her. And so she's able to leave the office at an earlier time every day. In exchange, she does actually come online again in the evening and catches up on any work that she missed out on.
What a great example. Give it up for John. So that's so awesome, because I think we all agree these days that it's literally less about where you work as much as it is about how you work, right? So as long as you're getting the work done, it doesn't really matter whether that's at 8:45 p.m. or at 3:45 in the afternoon. So you guys get the idea. All right, here's what nobody wants anymore. I heard just Tracy talking about this just a minute ago. Here's what nobody wants anymore. Nobody wants your big, long, rambling, honking email, okay? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that, trust me. When you get a big, long, rambling email from somebody, what do? What do? Close it, delete it. For those, delete is pretty strong, but for those of you who close it, here's why you do that. You say to yourself, I'll read that later. No, you're not going to read it later, because now you actually took a look at that thing and you know how awful it looks. You're not going to read that later. You tell yourself, I'm going to do that when I have more time, as if you're going to have more time later. You're never going to have more time. So would you rather read this or would you rather read that? This is the same email. White space and bullet points are your friends. White space and bullet points allow us to do what we're going to do anyway, which is skim. We're not going to read, we're going to skim. Because the only two reasons that someone sends an email is because I either want you to know something or I want you to do something. So if I want you to know something or do something, then I'm going to go skimming through this looking for the action item that you want me to get to. So if people are going to skim, then white space and bullet points are your friends. In fact, our language evolves to reflect culture, right? So we all use acronyms that make texting, emailing, communicating better, faster, easier, like LOL, BRB, TTYL. I don't know if you've seen this one. Too long, didn't read, okay? So, no, I'm not kidding, it's a thing, I didn't make this up. So, if you are guilty of being the person who sends those big, long, rambling emails, don't be surprised if somebody on the RSM teams emails back at some point and goes, TLDR, not doing it. We're not doing it. So here's another thing, agree to disagree. I don't know about you, but I was raised to say these words when I disagreed with somebody. And I was raised to say these words because I was taught that they are polite. And they are very polite words. They should work, but they don't. They should work, but they don't. So here's what happens. What is your name? Amber? Okay, so just go with me here, okay? So Amber, if I say to you, Amber, let's agree to disagree. You know what Amber hears? She doesn't hear that. What Amber hears is, Amber, you're too stupid to see that I'm right, okay? No, it's a really dismissive sounding thing, isn't it? Amber, let's just agree to disagree, shall we? I mean, doesn't that sound like super dismissive? And more importantly, it's a conversation ender. Because if I say, Amber, let's agree to disagree, shall we? I am actually and metaphorically walking away from this conversation. That's not a conversation that continues, it's a conversation ender. And I'm a firm believer that business cannot afford to have conversations ending. Here's a better way. A better way is to say, I see it differently. I see it differently is not antagonistic, it's not judgmental or superior, it's not combative, and I'm not even trying to win Amber over to my point of view. I'm not even trying to persuade her. It's a simple declarative statement. I see it differently. So, is that 606 or is that 909? It's both. Depends on how you see it. It's possible that two people can look at the exact same thing and see it differently, and neither is wrong or right. It's possible that they're both right. So, Amber, now I want you to say to me, Kelly, I see it differently. Tell me how you see it, Amber. And now we are moving the ball down the field. Chances are, if somebody says, I see it differently, you're not going to go, fine, and just walk away. You're actually going to probe on that a little bit and go, well, tell me how you see it. And then we're having a dialogue and not a debate. This is also useful at your family at the holidays, okay? If your family's anything like mine, we need We need tactics to get through it. Yeah, but this is a game changer. I see it differently is going to make people put the sword down, right? And it gets away from let's agree to disagree. You want the conversation moving forward at all times. So the other thing is take the emotion out of it. You know, we do get riled up at work, and for some of us, we get really riled up at work, especially if we're frustrated or we're upset about something. And those are emotions. And the thing is, you're not always going to like everybody that you work with. And a lot of us actually feel a lot of angst about that because it's like we're socialized to like, oh, we're a family here. We got to like love everybody. We are the world, okay? It's not always going to go like that, except that it is okay for you to not like somebody. You do have to be respectful and you do have to be professional at all times, but you don't have to like everybody you work with. In fact, I'm going to posture that at a company the size of this, it's not even possible. And there's all kinds of examples of high-performing teams where there's no way that people can actually like each other. Do you think that on an NFL team or a football team that everybody likes each other? No way. The average NFL team employs over 400 people between all the coaches and the administrative people. Do you think everybody on that team likes each other? No way. But when they get out there, they have a job to do, and they do it. Do you think everybody in a military platoon or troop likes everyone else in that troop? No way. But when they get out there, they have a job to do, and they do it. It's possible to be part of a high-performing team and not necessarily like everyone that you're going to work with. And I think it's important to understand that, again, from a social psychology standpoint, is just understanding human behavior. Let yourself off the hook. You do have to be professional and respectful, but it's not mandated that you're going to like everybody that you work with. And I want to talk about this because nobody else likes to talk about this. But I want to talk about this because I think it's super important, and it's more important than ever. Joe and I were having an interesting conversation last night about how divided the world is, and we can't fix that necessarily, but we can do our part in small ways, and I think maybe give people just a little bit of grace when they say the wrong thing. Because sometimes people do say the wrong thing. You're going to do it, I'm going to do it, your people are going to do it, your family's going to do it. People sometimes say the wrong thing out of thoughtlessness, carelessness, or ignorance, not because they're mean-spirited. So, a couple of examples. A friend of mine, Amber. Amber is a young woman, black attorney in Kansas City. She had to go do a deposition in Salina, Kansas. Does anybody know where Salina is? There's a few of you who know. Let me ask you if this is a fair statement. Would you agree that, for those of you who raised your hand, that Salina is very rural, very white, very small? Okay? So you guys get the picture. Really, really, really small town, rural, white. That's why most of you didn't know where it was. So Salina, Kansas. So she's got to go do this deposition. She says, I'll go to the other attorney's office. She walks into the other attorney's office, and as Amber described, the receptionist behind the desk, she said, the woman behind the desk was about 108 years old, okay? So she's 108, yeah, and Amber says, I'm here for the deposition. And the woman says to her, oh, well, you can just wait right over here for your attorney. And Amber says, well, no, actually, I am the attorney. I'm Amber Fitzgerald. I'm with Fitzgerald, Simmons, and Fitzpatrick. And then the woman said, oh, I didn't know they let paralegals do depositions. Yeah. Yeah. So she's telling me this, and I'm completely outraged, just as you are. But I mean, I'm actually a little more so. I mean, I'm like this. Clear, okay? She's like, yeah. I mean, I'm freaking out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did you do? I would have given her a piece of my mind. I would have told her that she is racist, and she's sexist, and she's ageist, and on top of that, she's an icky old lady. That's what I would have said. And my friend Amber's like, you know, Kelly, I could have done that, but she's 108, okay? Yeah. And she's not excusing her from that standpoint. She said, think about her context. When she started working, women were not in the workforce, and if they were clerical. So she said, I don't think she meant to insult me. I think she just said the first thing that came to her mind because that's her frame of reference. She wasn't trying to insult me, and I was like, all right, well, you're obviously a better person than I am, so what did you do? And she said, I brought it back to business. I reached into my business, my briefcase, I gave her a card, I introduced myself, and I said, I'm Amber Fitzgerald, I'm with this law firm, I'm the attorney for the defendant, I'm a little early, so I'm just gonna sit right over here and wait for my client. And she said that this woman knew exactly what she had done, and she was horrified. But she gave her a little bit of grace. She knew that she wasn't trying to insult her, she just gave her a little bit of grace. Here's another one. Itron. If you have heat in your home, go home and look at your heat meter, and chances are it says Itron. They're the largest makers of heat meters in the world. They have about 9,000 employees, very, very product-oriented engineering kind of company. And the HR director was talking to me about this, and she said, thank you for talking about how sometimes people say the wrong thing. Because here at Itron, every time somebody says something the wrong way to the wrong person or whatever, we get sued for $70 million. And I said, so what kind of things happen? And she said, well, and I'm not being stereotypical, I'm just telling you the story, okay? Here's what she said. She said, we have a lot of engineers here at Itron, and she said, and a lot of male engineers, when they're around other male engineers, because they're all brainiacs and they're all super smart, they try to outsmart each other in a meeting. They're trying to, like, you know, kind of one-up each other. And she said, so they peacock a little bit for each other. You know, they peacock when they're in a meeting together. Except I guess that's a chicken, right? So what? They peacock, yes. They peacock. So she said, you know, we had a guy in a meeting with a group of engineers who was suggesting a product development, and one of the guys said to him, well, that's the most retarded idea I've ever heard. Now, you know, and I know that this is wrong, 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 completely offensive and wrong. And I'm not excusing it, but you also know that this guy was not trying to mock mentally disabled people. He said the wrong thing. He's probably been saying that word all of his life, and I'm not excusing it. It's wrong. But he didn't mean it the way he said it. And so I said to my client, like, what did you do? And she goes, well, when we found out about this, we pulled him out, you know, in the meeting, and we said, Ted, not sure you know what you said in there, but here's what you said. Here's why it's offensive. Here's why it's wrong, and here's why that's never going to happen again. Are we clear? They gave him just a little bit of grace, and he was horrified. He didn't even know he'd said that. They gave him just a little bit of grace. Sally is my business manager. Sally lives in Evergreen, and she and her husband, she works for me, and her husband is a self-employed, independent electrical contractor, self-employed. So she had a Honda, and she decided that it was time to get a new car, and she had her car for 14 years, so she gets the little baby Benz. She steps up, and she gets the little baby Benz, and she's driving it around, and Evergreen, Colorado is a small community. Everybody knows everybody. She's at the grocery store, and she sees her neighbor as she's putting groceries into her car, and her neighbor's like, whoa, Sally, new wheels. And she's like, I know, it's so exciting. I haven't had a new car in 14 years. And he said, Benz, whoa, stepping up. And she goes, I know, isn't it pretty? It's so exciting. And then he said, your husband, Todd, must be doing pretty well. So my point is this. I said, Sally, what did you say? And she goes, hey, I just told him, Todd had nothing to do with this. I work too. The point is, this is her neighbor. He's not trying to insult her. He just said the wrong thing. So sometimes people say the wrong thing. And I think in those moments, we can actually make a choice and give somebody a little bit of grace and bring it back to business or not. And I'm not talking about things that are blatantly racist, blatantly sexist, blatantly ageist, blatantly homophobic or whatever. That's stuff for HR. I'm talking about the little slips that all of us make. So I'm just going to share one that's personal, and then I'll move on. This is something that I do that I'm working very, very, very hard not to do anymore, but I still mess up and I still slip and it still comes out once in a while, and I'm horrified every time I do it. So I've probably been doing it for the last 2 decades. In an effort to always be flippin' funny, if I'm talking to somebody about their job, let's say, and they're talking about like how they had a reorganization or something very, very, very difficult at work, I would always say, oh my gosh, if I had to do that, I would kill myself. That's not funny. I said that in an effort to be funny for years until I lost somebody that I love very much to suicide, and then I realized this is so not funny. And so I'm saying that I still slip. I'm so much better about it, but I still slip because it's a terrible habit. But in that moment when I slip, number one, I want somebody to call me out on it, and number two, I would hope that they give me a little bit of grace, because in that moment, I'm not a bad person, I'm just a really insensitive one. And the only way I'm gonna get better is if you call me out on it every time. I'm better about it. So, sometimes people say the wrong thing. The other thing is sometimes people are negative. Anybody here ever dealing with any naysayers? right? Especially about diversity. Some people are like, oh my gosh, why do we have to be doing this? Kumbaya, right? So, no, seriously, we're dealing with naysayers, and so the only way to deal with naysayers is to actually deal with them head on all the time like whack-a-mole, okay? Because, do you ever play whack-a-mole? Right? Every time you whack the mole down, it comes up somewhere else. So they're never, ever going to be gone. They're always going to be part of your associates or your team. There's naysayers that are always going to be there. So, yeah, you have to constantly keep at it. There's going to be the haters, the doubters, the non-believers, and then there's you. So the way to do it is to meet negative mindsets always consistently head on with positives. So oversimplifications here, but when they say, I don't think there's any way that we can complete that by Friday, you say, I know it's going to be a challenge, but I'm confident you can do it. When they say, I don't think our team can do this, you say, I know you have doubts, but let's talk about what can be done to ensure success. Never, ever give the naysayers the upper hand, because you will go down that hole and it just goes on and on and on forever. You will never be able to dig out from under it. So the other thing, though, is understand that sometimes negativity is actually fear. So sometimes the fear is expressed as negativity. And fear is different than just somebody being negative Ned, all right? So fear is real. Fear is real. And as leaders, you have to understand that it's a real emotion. And if somebody is fearful, it can be manifesting itself in those negative ways. So when a negative view of an issue is expressed at work, you could say something like, I know this is a difficult project, and I know you're anxious about the outcome. But we have confidence in you and the team. Your skills are exactly what we need for this. What can I do to support you? And by saying something like that, I know you're anxious about the outcome, you are actually acknowledging what's really going on for that person, which is, I don't know if I can do this, I'm in over my head, whatever it might be. And that's fear. And that's what good leaders do too, is they recognize the difference between just negativity and fear. Lastly, 4 magic words. And Rich used them this morning. 4 magic words. And on the panel, Rich used them, and it was amazing. And these 4 magic words are going to change your life, because that's why they're magic. These words are, I need your help. Rich used, we need your help. Stop saying, can you help me? Stop saying that. Just eradicate those 4 words from your vocabulary and replace instead with, I need your help. They work very, very differently. Let's see, what's your name? Mario. Okay, let's try this, okay? Mario, say to me, Kelly, can you help me? Mario, I wish I could, but you know, Joe needs these numbers by 3, and you know how he gets when he doesn't get the numbers by 3, like, right? So I love you like a brother, Mario. I would actually do anything for you under any circumstances, except not now because Joe, okay? So seriously, I feel really bad. I would totally help you if I could, but I gotta go, okay? Yeah. So here's the deal. If you ask me a yes or a no question, Kelly, can you help me? The answer can be no. I had very good rationale. I had very good reasons. I was very professional about it. I was super diplomatic, but you still got a big fat no. Let's try it this way. Are you ready? Don't say anything. You play with me here, all right? Ready? Mario, I need your help. You say, how can I help? What's going on? What do you need? Something like that. Here's how I knew, I don't know Mario, here's how I knew that Mario or any of you would answer this way. Here's how I know this, I can bank on this. Because anthropologically, we are designed as human beings to live together. We're not designed to live alone. We're designed to live together. No matter how primitive the society, anywhere in the world, people live together. In fact, it's not just how we survive, it's actually healthy and normal for us. It is unhealthy and unnormal and not good for us, toxic in fact, for us to be alone. That is why people who are incarcerated, who get sent to solitary confinement, lose their minds. Because they literally go crazy because it's not healthy for us. So, if we are designed to live together as a species, we are designed to help each other. And consequently, I can ask Mario or any of you, and I can not ask you, I can tell you, I need your help, and it will trigger something inside of you, anthropologically, that is designed to make you step forward and say, what do you need? How can I help? And then the cool thing is, if Mario actually can't help me, Mario does not have the numbers that I need, but what's your name? Kendra. Mario says, you know what, now that I know what you need, Kelly, I don't actually have those numbers, but Kendra does. Let me get her on the phone. And now Mario's actually helping me, even though he's actually out of the equation. This will never let you down. Stop saying, can you help me? And say instead, I need your help, and you will move mountains. So has this been helpful? All right, we're going to do table talk in a minute. All right, but so I'm just wrapping up. 5 things to do and remember. We talked about a bunch of stuff. 5 things to do and remember. Expect it to feel awkward when you're working with someone new and different. Just because it's awkward doesn't mean it's not working. Power through, it's only going to be awkward once. Have conversations and not debates. Use I see it differently. Right, Amber? Right. Adapt to others and their differences. Give people what they want. You had great examples of how you've already doing this, and you're doing it without even thinking about it. So just keep doing that. Try to give people what they want. It always works. Talk straight. Use simple language, especially when it's a tough conversation. Just remember, anybody can give good news. The real test of your leadership is how you treat people when you don't have good news. And use I need your help. Okay? So. There's somebody taking a picture. We're just going to wait because the paparazzi's here. And I think we got it. Okay, so wrapping up, I want to leave you with my favorite African proverb. I hope you like this. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. So thank you. You've been an absolutely fantastic audience. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. And there's more in this book. And I'm around all day to do that. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. Continue to be outstanding. Thank you so much. Let's give Kelly another round of applause, everybody. Okay, so now, don't we wish we had Kelly in our offices every day? We just pull her in, have her educate people with all of these tips. So we're going to practice these tips. We have some exercises for you that will allow us to take a deeper dive in some of the recommendations that you made. And Kelly will be here as our coach to help us work through the questions that are coming. But first, we're going to take a quick break. So we have 15 minutes. I'm sorry? Be back at 11 a.m. And then we'll get started on our workshop